The first time Chief Obinna threatened Pastor Daniel, he did it in front of 37 people and a coffin. It was a wet Saturday morning in Abuja. The burial compound was crowded with plastic canopies. Women in black wrappers sat together near the kitchen, speaking in low voices. Men stood beneath a mango tree, their shoes stained with mud. At the center of the compound lay the polished coffin of Chukwudi Madu, a 32-year-old mechanic who had died after a brief illness. His mother had asked Pastor Daniel to conduct the burial because Chukwudi had attended Grace Covenant Assembly during the final months of his life. But some members of the extended family insisted that the old rites must also be performed. The disagreement had begun quietly until Chief Obinna arrived. People called him Dibia Nkwocha, the healer who saw beneath the skin. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, with a carefully trimmed grey beard and dark, watchful eyes. Cowrie shells hung across his red and black wrapper. White chalk marked one side of his forehead. He carried no staff, but two younger men walked behind him with a leather bag and a clay pot covered with red cloth. The conversations stopped as he entered. Pastor Daniel stood beside the coffin in a plain black suit, holding his Bible against his chest. He was 42, lean, soft-spoken and not physically imposing. His church occupied a converted warehouse off Kubwa Expressway. It had 400 plastic chairs, but on most Sundays fewer than 120 were occupied. Chief Obinna looked at him and smiled without warmth. "Pastor," he said, "they told me you have refused to allow the family to complete what their fathers started." Daniel kept his voice respectful. "Chief, I did not stop anybody. Chukwudi gave his life to Christ before he died. His mother requested a Christian burial. That is what I came to conduct. And you think because you carried one Bible from Abuja, the land has forgotten its owners." Several men shifted uncomfortably. Chukwudi's mother began to cry again. Daniel glanced towards her. "Today is not a day for a contest. This family is grieving. You entered a contest the day you told people that the powers protecting their fathers were darkness. I preach what I believe. I have never entered your shrine to insult you." Chief Obinna stepped closer. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the canopy between them. "But you enter people's minds," he said. "You make children return home and call the traditions of their fathers evil. You make wives burn what belongs to their husbands. Then you stand there and say you have not entered my house." Pastor Daniel felt every eye resting on him. For weeks, he had heard that Chief Obinna was angry because 3 families who once visited his shrine had joined Grace Covenant Assembly. Daniel had dismissed the reports as gossip. Now the anger stood less than 2 meters away from him. "Faith cannot be forced," Daniel said. "Those who come to church come by their own decision." Chief Obinna laughed. "Then let us see how long they remain." The burial ground became so quiet that the rain sounded like fingers drumming against the canopy. "Chief," an elderly uncle pleaded, "please, not today." But Obinna continued looking at Daniel. "You tell them your God is stronger than every other power. I have heard you. I tell them God is sovereign. Good. You will soon have the opportunity to prove it." Daniel's grip tightened around his Bible. Chief Obinna turned to the gathered family. "Bury your son however you want. But when the night begins to speak, do not say nobody warned you." He walked away with the 2 young men behind him. Nobody tried to stop him. Pastor Daniel completed the service, but his concentration never fully returned. Even while he preached about resurrection, he could feel fear moving through the gathering. It was not loud. It passed from face to face, settling inside people who had lived long enough to believe that certain words should never be spoken carelessly. That evening, Daniel told his wife what had happened. Miriam was in the kitchen of their rented 3-bedroom flat in Dawaki, stirring a pot of stew while their 11-year-old daughter, Favor, completed her homework at the dining table. The generator from the neighboring compound coughed through the open window. "What exactly did he say?" Miriam asked. Daniel repeated the conversation. She stopped stirring. "And you are only telling me now? What would you have done at the burial? At least I would not be hearing it at 7 o'clock as if you are telling me somebody scratched the car." "Miriam, lower your voice." She looked towards Favor and lowered it. "Daniel, that man is not known for empty threats." "I know. Do you?" Her eyes searched his face. "Because sometimes you behave as if being a pastor means you are not allowed to admit that something frightens you." Daniel sat at the small dining table. "I am not frightened." Miriam held his gaze until he looked away. "Fine," he admitted. "I am concerned." That is fear wearing a tie. Despite himself, Daniel almost smiled. Then the lights went off, and the flat fell into darkness before the rechargeable lamp came on. That night they prayed together. Daniel prayed firmly, refusing to mention Chief Obinna by name in front of Favor. After his family went to bed, he remained in the sitting room with his Bible open on his lap. Around 2 in the morning, a dog began barking somewhere beyond the compound wall. Another answered. Then another. Daniel told himself it meant nothing. By Thursday, he had almost succeeded in believing it. After the midweek service, he left the church shortly before 9. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the Kubwa Expressway shining beneath the headlights. The church's aging silver Toyota Camry vibrated whenever he drove above 80 kilometers per hour, so Daniel remained in the middle lane and kept his speed moderate. He had just passed the Dei junction when he heard a sharp metallic crack beneath the car. The steering wheel jerked violently. The Camry pulled towards a fuel tanker in the next lane. Daniel gripped the wheel with both hands and stamped the brake. Nothing happened. The pedal dropped uselessly beneath his foot. Jesus! The tanker's horn roared beside him. Daniel turned the wheel with all his strength. The Camry spun, struck the concrete divider and rolled onto its side. Glass burst across his face. Metal screamed against the road. Then everything stopped. For several seconds, Daniel hung sideways against the seat belt, unable to understand why he was still conscious. Petrol fumes entered the car. He heard people shouting, "Ogre, don't move. Bring something. The car can catch fire. Is anybody inside?" Daniel touched his forehead. His fingers came away bloody. He tried to answer, but his lungs refused to cooperate. The driver's window was shattered. 2 men pulled the door until it bent far enough for them to reach him. They cut the seat belt and dragged him onto the wet road. As he lay beneath the headlights of stopped vehicles, Daniel remembered Chief Obinna's voice. "You will soon have the opportunity to prove it." The doctors at Kubwa General Hospital found a deep cut above his eyebrow, bruised ribs, and a fractured left wrist. No spinal injury. No internal bleeding. The police officer who inspected the car said the front brake hose had ruptured and the right tie rod had separated. It could have been poor maintenance. It could have been tampering. The vehicle was old enough to make either explanation believable. Miriam arrived at the hospital shaking with anger and fear. "You said you were concerned," she whispered after Favor was taken outside by an usher. "Daniel, look at yourself. I am alive." That is not an answer. What do you want me to say? Say that this may be connected to what happened at that burial. Daniel stared at the plaster around his wrist. I don't know. But you have thought about it. He nodded. The following Sunday, he preached with stitches above his eye and his arm in a sling. The church was unusually full because photographs of the wrecked car had circulated through WhatsApp groups. Daniel stood behind the transparent lectern while members watched him with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. Some of you have come to see whether your pastor can still stand, he said. Uneasy laughter moved through the hall. I can stand. Not because I am powerful. Not because I know how to return evil to anybody. I stand because mercy preserved me. Amen, the congregation answered. But hear me clearly. We will not turn this altar into a place of revenge. We will not call anybody's name and command them to die. That is not the gospel I received. The response was weaker this time. After the service, an elderly woman named Mamarifima waited until most people had gone. Pastor, you must pray dangerous prayer, she told him. This is not a matter for English. Daniel smiled tiredly. Mama, prayer is dangerous because God hears it, not because we shout death against somebody. She shook her head. You young pastors think every battle will respect grammar. Before Daniel could respond, an usher approached with a small brown envelope found beneath the windscreen of Miriam's car. There was no letter inside, only a photograph of the wrecked Camry and a short sentence written across the back. The road rejected you once. It will not miss you twice. Miriam read it and sat down. Daniel looked around the church compound. Beyond the fence, vehicles moved along the dusty access road. Hawkers pushed wheelbarrows. 2 boys kicked a flattened plastic bottle. Nothing appeared unusual. But for the first time since becoming a pastor, the altar behind him no longer felt like the safest place in the room. The attack on the church did not begin with thunder, blood, or voices in the night. It began with empty chairs. 3 families stopped attending the week after Daniel's accident. Sister Amaka said her husband had forbidden her from returning. Brother Kelvin claimed his work schedule had changed, although an usher later saw him at another church. The Chukwu family left Abuja without saying goodbye. By the end of the month, Sunday attendance had fallen from 123 to 86. Pastor Daniel tried not to count, but he counted. He noticed the gaps during worship. He noticed the reduced offering when the treasurer placed the figures on his desk. He noticed that people who once waited after service to greet him now hurried towards the gate before darkness came. Rumors traveled faster than explanations. Someone claimed a woman had seen a black goat walking around the church at midnight. Another said the soil beneath the altar had been taken to a shrine. A voice note circulated warning members that a serious spiritual battle was about to consume the pastor's family. Daniel reported the threatening envelope to the police. An officer took his statement and advised him to install cameras and avoid traveling alone. There was no evidence connecting Chief Obinna to the accident or the note. Pastor, these cases are difficult, the officer said. If somebody threatened you openly, bring witnesses. If anybody trespasses, call us immediately. But spiritual allegation is not something we can write in a charge sheet. Daniel understood. He also hated how relieved he felt to hear someone speak in ordinary, practical terms. The church installed 2 inexpensive cameras. The men's fellowship arranged for volunteers to stay in the compound overnight. Daniel changed his driving routine and accepted rides from members. These precautions made sense, yet every one of them felt like a public announcement that the pastor was afraid. Chief Obinna finally called him on a Tuesday evening. Daniel was alone in the church office reviewing unpaid bills when an unfamiliar number appeared on his screen. "Pastor Daniel," the caller said. Daniel recognized the voice immediately. "Chief Obinna. I heard your God delivered you from the road. If you have something to tell me, say it. There is anger in your voice. There was a threat on my car. Then report it to your government. Is that not why you people like Abuja?" Daniel stood and walked towards the office window. "Did you cause the accident?" Chief Obinna chuckled. A man of faith should know the answer without asking. "Listen to me. If anything happens to my wife or my child, what will you do?" The question silenced him. "Will you pray for me to die?" Obinna continued. "Will your ushers carry guns? Or will you finally discover that the world is older than your small church?" Daniel forced himself to breathe slowly. "Why are you doing this? You are the one doing it. You are taking what belongs to me. Human beings do not belong to you. Then keep them if you can. Before the year ends, you will preach to chairs. After that, your own house will scatter. When there is nothing left, perhaps you will learn respect." The line went dead. Daniel remained beside the window, phone still pressed to his ear. That night, he did not tell Miriam about the call. The omission became a weight inside the house. He began checking the doors twice before bed. When Favor returned 10 minutes late from school, he telephoned her teacher, the school driver and 2 parents before the girl entered the compound eating groundnuts and wondering why everyone looked terrified. Miriam confronted him after putting her to bed. "What are you not telling me?" "Nothing. Daniel." He sat at the edge of their bed and told her about the call. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she picked up her pillow and walked towards the door. "Where are you going?" "The guest room." "Miriam, please." She turned, tears bright in her eyes. "You decided that I should sleep peacefully while somebody threatened my home. Is that love, or is it control?" "I was protecting you." "From information?" "I am your wife, Daniel. I am already inside the danger. What do you want me to do? Stand in the sitting room every evening and announce the latest threat? I want you to stop carrying fear alone until it changes you into somebody we cannot reach." Her words struck more deeply than he expected. "I am the pastor," he said quietly. "And who told you pastors are not human beings?" She slept in the guest room that night. The following Sunday, the church's sound system failed during worship. 10 minutes later, a young woman collapsed near the back row. Her body stiffened and she began screaming that something beneath the altar was calling her name. Panic moved through the congregation. Some members prayed. Others reached for their phones. 2 women ran outside with their children. Daniel left the lectern and knelt a short distance from the woman. He asked people to give her space. While the prayer team prayed softly, he instructed an usher to call an ambulance. "No ambulance," one man protested. "Pastor, cast it out." Daniel ignored him. The woman's breathing was rapid, and her fingers had curled tightly into her palms. After several minutes, she became calm but disoriented. Paramedics later said she had suffered a severe panic episode, possibly worsened by the rumors she had heard before the service. That explanation did not survive the afternoon. By evening, edited footage of the incident was circulating online beneath the caption, "Evil power invades Abuja church after pastor challenges native doctor." The following Sunday, only 59 adults attended. Associate Pastor Samuel wanted Daniel to respond publicly. "People need reassurance," Samuel said during Monday's leadership meeting. "We cannot behave as if nothing is happening." "What do you want me to tell them?" Daniel asked. "That a native doctor has surrounded the church with demons. I want you to tell them we are not defeated. The moment I build sermons around that man, I make him the center of this ministry." The church secretary, Sister Ruth, adjusted her glasses. "Sir, with respect, he is already controlling the conversation. Silence is not removing him." Daniel looked around the table. Every leader appeared tired. "Then what are you suggesting?" Samuel leaned forward. 7 nights of prayer. Publicly announced. Let people know we are standing. Standing against what? Against fear. Against intimidation. Against whatever is attacking this church. Daniel knew the program could become a spectacle. He could already hear the reckless prayers some people would offer and imagine the sensational posters spreading online. Yet he also knew that his refusal was no longer entirely theological. Part of him was afraid that they would pray and nothing would change. "No posters about native doctors," he said. "No naming anybody. No prayers for people to die." Samuel nodded. "Agreed. And we call the program When Fear Comes. We address what is happening inside us, not only what may be happening outside." The first night drew 40 people. There was no elaborate music. The choir sang familiar worship songs while rain struck the warehouse roof. Daniel preached from the story of Elijah, but he avoided the triumphant sections and focused on the exhausted prophet beneath the tree, the man who had seen fire fall and still became afraid. "Faith is not pretending you did not hear the threat," Daniel said. "Faith is deciding that the threat will not become your master." His voice broke on the final word. For the first time, he told the congregation about the telephone call. He admitted that he had been checking doors at night and struggling to sleep. He admitted that he had hidden information from his wife because he wanted to appear strong. Nobody shouted. Miriam sat in the front row, weeping silently. "I cannot promise you that Christians never suffer," Daniel continued. "My car was destroyed. Some of you have left because you are afraid. Our finances are failing. Those things are real. But I can promise you this: fear will not decide what we become. We will take wise precautions. We will tell the police the truth. We will pray. And we will not become cruel in order to defeat cruelty." The congregation rose slowly. That night, the prayers sounded different. There were no boasts. People prayed for courage, wisdom, and protection. They prayed for those who had left. Miriam prayed for her husband. Then, after a long hesitation, she prayed for Chief Obinna. "God," she said, her voice trembling, "whatever has made this man believe that fear is the only way he can remain important, confront it. Save him before he destroys himself and other people." Daniel opened his eyes. It was the first time anyone had prayed for Obinna as a human being. Across the city, Chief Obinna was not thinking about Grace Covenant Assembly. He was in a private room behind his compound in Gwagwalada, sitting before shelves crowded with bottles, carved figures, feathers, and bundles wrapped in cloth. A kerosene lamp burned beside a shallow brass bowl. Before him knelt a young businessman who believed his partner was stealing from him. Obinna listened, asked questions, and collected a brown envelope. Much of his work depended less on mystery than people imagined. Clients revealed their fears, enemies, and secrets. Obinna remembered everything. Information traveled through relatives, drivers, domestic workers, and drinking companions. When a prediction came true, the shrine received credit. When it failed, the client was blamed for breaking an instruction. But Obinna also believed deeply in the world he served. His father had trained him from childhood. His reputation had fed his family, educated his sons, and earned the respect that poverty had once denied him. Every person who abandoned his shrine for Daniel's church felt like more than a lost client. It felt like a verdict against his father, his history, and the identity on which he had built his life. After the businessman left, Obinna's assistant, Namdi, entered the room. "The church started night prayers," Namdi said. Obinna did not look up. "Let them pray. People are saying the pastor spoke boldly." People always speak boldly when a microphone is in front of them. Namdi hesitated. "Should we leave them now? The accident has already brought police attention." Obinna raised his eyes. "Are you afraid?" "I am careful. Careful men do not become powerful." Namdi looked at the brass bowl. A fine crack had appeared along its edge. "Papa, this was not cracked yesterday." Obinna's expression changed for only a second. "Replace it." On the fourth night of prayer, someone threw a burning bottle over the church fence. It landed near the generator shed and ignited a patch of dry rubbish. The security volunteers extinguished the flames before they spread. One camera captured a motorcycle slowing outside the gate, but the number plate was unreadable. Police returned to the compound. This time, they treated the threat more seriously. Miriam wanted Daniel to suspend the program. "Prayer does not mean gathering people where somebody can burn them alive," she argued. "If we stop now, what message do we send?" "I am not discussing messages. I am discussing lives." Daniel paced inside his office. "We can increase security." "With what money?" "Samuel knows 2 officers who can." "And if the next bottle enters through the roof?" He had no answer. Miriam sat down and covered her face. "I hate what this is doing to us." Daniel knelt in front of her. "So do I." "Then end it." "The prayer program." "The contest." "I did not start it." "But somewhere along the line, you started needing to win it." Daniel recoiled as if she had slapped him. "That is not fair." "Isn't it? You count the chairs every Sunday. You read every comment online. You say you do not want that man to become the center of the ministry, but he has become the center of your mind." Silence filled the office. Daniel rose and walked to the window. In the compound, 2 policemen examined the scorched ground while church workers whispered nearby. Miriam came to stand behind him. "I am not asking you to surrender to him," she said. "I am asking you to surrender this need to prove that you are the stronger man." Daniel looked through the glass for a long time. That evening, he cancelled the remaining public night services. Some members called it wisdom. Others called it defeat. A popular online commentator announced that the embattled Abuja pastor had suspended his prayer campaign after another spiritual warning. Daniel did not respond. Instead, the church began meeting in groups of 10 inside members' homes. They prayed quietly. They delivered food to 2 frightened families. A lawyer in the congregation helped organize the evidence for the police. Electricians installed brighter security lights. The leadership created a transport system so vulnerable members would not travel alone after evening meetings. Attendance stopped falling. Then something happened that Daniel had not expected. People began returning. Not in crowds. One family came back after Samuel visited them. Sister Amaka began attending the women's fellowship without her husband's knowledge, then eventually persuaded him to meet Daniel. The young woman who had collapsed returned and publicly explained that she was receiving treatment for anxiety. The church was not exploding with miraculous growth. It was healing slowly. Chief Obinna heard about every return. At the same time, his own household began to fracture. His eldest son, Kenechukwu, came home from Enugu and accused him of using the family name to intimidate people. Nnamdi disappeared after police traced the motorcycle used during the fire attack to one of his cousins. 3 clients demanded refunds after promised outcomes failed. A woman publicly accused Obinna of collecting nearly 2 million naira while her husband's illness worsened. Then Obinna's 7-year-old granddaughter, Adiz, became seriously ill. She had been staying in his compound during the school holiday when she developed a high fever and began vomiting. Obinna prepared herbs. By the second day, she was barely conscious. His daughter, Ijeoma, pushed the bowl from his hand. "We are taking her to hospital. I know what is wrong with her." "Then why is she getting worse?" The question hung between them. "Some sicknesses resist before they leave," he said. Ijeoma lifted the child from the mat. "You can call me disrespectful later. I will not let my daughter die because everybody is afraid to question you." At the hospital, doctors diagnosed severe malaria complicated by dehydration. Adiz was admitted immediately. Obinna sat outside the pediatric ward until dawn, still wearing the red beads that made strangers give him space. He listened to machines beep behind the doors and discovered that none of his titles could force the doctor to bring good news sooner. When Adiz finally opened her eyes the next afternoon, she asked for water and whispered, "Grandpa, I had a bad dream." "It has passed," he told her. "A man was chasing you." Obinna's hand tightened around hers. "Which man?" "I don't know. He had your face." That night, Obinna returned to his shrine room alone. The cracked brass bowl had been replaced, but the new one lay overturned. The kerosene lamp would not remain lit. He struck match after match until his fingers shook. For the first time in 40 years, the room did not feel powerful. It felt crowded with every lie he had told in order to protect his name. He remembered the mechanic's burial. He remembered the fear on the mother's face and how satisfying it had felt to silence an entire compound. He remembered instructing Nnamdi to warn the church, without asking what method he intended to use. He remembered bribing a mechanic to weaken the pastor's car while it was parked outside a tire shop. He had told himself Daniel needed a lesson. But a lesson did not require a man to die. The thought entered him with such force that he staggered backwards. Outside, the wind pushed against the corrugated roof. Bottles rattled on the shelf. Obinna sank onto a wooden stool and pressed both hands against his ears. "Enough," he whispered. No voice had spoken. Yet throughout the night, he heard the sound of twisting metal. Chief Obinna did not go to the church immediately. Pride rarely collapses in one moment. It bargains for survival. For 2 weeks, he tried to restore order. He replaced Nnamdi with another assistant. He performed cleansing rites in the compound. He visited an older practitioner outside Kefi and returned with instructions that cost him heavily and accomplished nothing. He told clients he was observing a sacred period of silence, when in truth he had become afraid to promise what would happen tomorrow. Sleep abandoned him. Whenever he closed his eyes, the Camry spun across the wet expressway. Sometimes Pastor Daniel was inside. Sometimes Adiz was in the driver's seat. Sometimes Obinna himself hung from the seat belt while people stood outside asking whether he was still powerful. His blood pressure rose. Food lost its taste. He began seeing movement at the edge of his vision. Ijeoma found him one morning sitting outside the shrine room before sunrise. "Papa, you need a doctor. I am not sick. You have not slept for days. Sleep will come." She sat beside him. "What did you do to that pastor?" Obinna turned slowly. "Who spoke to you?" "Nobody needed to. Since that burial, you have been fighting a battle that is eating this family. He insulted our way of life." "Did he?" "You were not there." "I heard what happened. He conducted the burial the dead man requested. You were the one who turned it into a public contest." Obinna stood. "Be careful how you speak to me." Ijeoma stood as well. "That is the problem, Papa. Everybody has been careful for so long that nobody tells you the truth." He raised his hand, but he did not strike her. She did not move. "If you caused that accident," she said, "go and confess before it destroys you." Obinna lowered his hand. "You want me to kneel before that boy? I want you to stop pretending that kneeling is worse than killing." She walked away. On Saturday evening, Pastor Daniel received a call from Inspector Bala, the officer handling the case. Namdi had surrendered through a lawyer. He admitted organizing the petrol bomb attack and claimed Chief Obinna had ordered him to frighten the church, although Obinna had not specifically instructed him to start a fire. More seriously, Namdi had provided information about the mechanic who tampered with Daniel's car. "We are preparing to arrest Chief Obinna," Bala said. "I am advising you because this may become public very quickly." Daniel sat in the darkened church office, listening. For months he had imagined proof arriving. He expected relief, perhaps triumph. Instead, he felt grief. "Inspector, do what the law requires," he said. "Naturally. But be careful tomorrow. If he hears we are coming, he may react." Daniel informed Miriam and the church leadership. Security was increased for Sunday service. 2 plainclothes officers sat near the rear entrance. Daniel resisted pressure to preach about the investigation. "Until charges are filed, we will not turn allegations into testimony," he said. Sunday morning arrived bright and unusually clear. Sunlight entered through the high warehouse windows. The choir wore navy blue and cream. Children chased one another between the chairs until ushers guided them towards their section. By 9:30, 111 adults were seated, still fewer than before the threats, but enough to make the hall feel alive again. Daniel stood behind the curtain near the altar, adjusting his microphone with his healing wrist. Miriam approached and straightened his tie. "How do you feel?" she asked. "As if everybody knows something I don't." "That is how you feel every Sunday." He smiled. It was the first easy smile she had seen from him in months. "Whatever happens," she said, "do not perform for anybody." Daniel nodded. The service began. Worship was quieter than usual. Daniel sat in the front row, listening as the congregation sang about mercy. He had planned to preach from the account of Jesus calming the storm. His notes rested on the lectern. At 10:47, the rear doors opened. The change in the room was immediate. Singing faltered near the back and died row by row. Chief Obinna stood in the doorway. He had not come disguised. He wore a dark wrapper across one shoulder, rows of cowrie shells and red beads around his neck. White markings crossed his forehead and forearms. In his right hand, he carried the carved wooden staff people associated with his shrine. But he had come alone. His beard was untidy. His eyes were swollen from lack of sleep. The man who had once entered a burial compound as if the ground belonged to him now stood uncertainly beneath the church's metal doorframe. Several people screamed. Chairs scraped backwards. A mother pulled 2 children behind her. Members of the prayer team began speaking loudly in tongues. The plainclothes officers rose. Associate Pastor Samuel moved towards Daniel. "Sir, go into the office." Obinna lifted his empty left hand. "I did not come to fight." "Stay where you are," one officer ordered. The staff slipped from Obinna's hand and struck the concrete floor. The sound echoed through the hall. Then Chief Obinna lowered himself onto both knees. Not before Daniel. Not at Daniel's feet. He knelt in the central aisle, facing the altar, while more than 100 people watched. "Please," he said. His voice was almost inaudible. Daniel remained beside the lectern. Every instinct told him to control the moment, but Miriam's warning returned to him. Do not perform for anybody. He raised one hand towards the prayer team. "Everybody, be quiet." The hall slowly settled. "Chief Obinna," Daniel said, "why are you here?" Obinna looked towards him but remained on his knees. "Because I have done evil." A murmur passed through the congregation. "Stand up," Daniel said. "We can speak privately." No, Obinna's voice cracked. "I disgraced you where people could see it. I threatened you where people could hear me. Let them also hear the truth." Inspector Bala had warned Daniel that a public confession could affect the investigation. Daniel glanced towards the officers. One of them was already recording. "Nobody should touch him," Daniel instructed. "Chief, say only what you have freely chosen to say." Obinna swallowed. The accident was not an accident. Miriam gripped the back of a chair. "I paid a man to damage your car," Obinna continued. "I wanted you to be frightened. I told myself you would discover it before driving far. That was a lie I used to protect myself. I knew you could die." The congregation erupted. "Jesus! Wicked man! Police, carry him!" Samuel stepped in front of the altar as several young men moved into the aisle. Daniel raised his voice. "Nobody will attack anybody in this church." The men stopped, breathing heavily. Obinna bowed his head. "I sent threats. I told my assistant to frighten your members. I knew he was doing dangerous things, and I refused to ask because I wanted my hands to look clean. When people left this church, I was happy." Daniel's injured wrist began to ache beneath his cuff. "Why?" he asked. Obinna looked up. Tears had begun cutting through the white chalk on his face. "Because I believed your faith was making me disappear. People who once feared me began to question me. I called it defense of tradition, but it was pride. I wanted to prove that my power was greater than your God." "And what changed?" Obinna looked around the church. There was no spectacle in his expression now, only exhaustion. "Nothing obeys me anymore," he said. "My house has no peace. My granddaughter nearly died while I stood beside her with all my knowledge and could not save her. Every night I see the car. Every night I hear the metal. I have gone to stronger places. I have spent money. I have performed everything they told me. The darkness is still inside me." He pressed a fist against his chest. "I thought your God was attacking me, but I began to understand that the thing destroying me was what I had become." The hall was completely silent. "I came because I do not want to die inside that life," Obinna said. "If God can forgive a man like me, ask him to forgive me. If he cannot, let the police take me. I am tired." Daniel looked at the man kneeling in the aisle and felt anger rise with a purity that frightened him. He saw the spinning road, Miriam's face at the hospital, Favor crying beside the wrecked car. He remembered empty chairs, sleepless nights, and the burning ground beside the generator shed. For months, he had preached that he did not want revenge. Now revenge stood before him and looked almost reasonable. He could humiliate Obinna. The congregation would support him. A dramatic video would spread before evening. The feared native doctor defeated at the pastor's altar. Grace Covenant Assembly would become famous. The empty chairs would fill. Daniel suddenly understood that this was his own final test. He left the altar and walked slowly into the aisle. Obinna lowered his head as Daniel approached. Daniel stopped several steps away. "Look at me, Chief." Obinna obeyed. "Forgiveness is not the same as pretending nothing happened," Daniel said. "A crime was committed. There are consequences, and I will not obstruct them." Obinna nodded. "I know. You will tell the police everything. You will name everybody involved. You will return what you collected through deception where that is possible. You will seek forgiveness from the people you harmed, not only from me. I will. And understand this, you did not lose a contest to me. I have no power of my own to compete with you. If you kneel here, you are not kneeling before Pastor Daniel. You are kneeling before God." Obinna's shoulders shook. Daniel turned towards the congregation. "Church, some of you want to celebrate because the man who threatened us is on his knees. Be careful. If his humiliation gives us more joy than his repentance, then darkness has only changed clothes." Several people lowered their heads. "We will not touch him. We will not insult him. We will not use this moment to advertise ourselves. We will pray. After that, he will go with the officers and answer for what he has done." Daniel knelt, not in front of Obinna as a conqueror, but beside him as another man in need of mercy. Miriam came first. Then Samuel. Slowly, members of the church left their chairs and gathered at a respectful distance. Daniel did not shout. "God of mercy," he prayed, "you see every life this man has wounded. You see the fear he created and the lies he told. We will not call evil good, but we ask that truth begin its work in him today. Break his pride. Give him courage to confess completely and accept the consequences. Protect every person endangered by his actions. Heal this church from hatred, and protect us from becoming proud because you preserved us." Obinna began to sob. The sound was not dignified. It came from somewhere beneath the titles, beads, and fear that had protected him for decades. He removed the cowrie shells from his neck and placed them on the floor. Then the red beads. Then the cloth tied around his wrist. "I surrender," he whispered. "God, I surrender." Nobody fell. No thunder shook the building. There was no sudden wind or unexplained light. Only a tired man kneeling on a concrete floor, confessing that the power he used to control others had enslaved him too. When the prayer ended, Inspector Bala approached. He allowed Obinna to stand and quietly informed him of his rights. The officers did not drag him. Obinna held out his hands and walked between them towards the rear door. Before leaving, he turned to Daniel. "Will you come and see me?" Daniel's answer did not come easily. "Yes," he said at last, "but I will come with others. Healing needs truth and accountability." Obinna nodded and left. The congregation remained standing long after the doors closed. Samuel approached the lectern. "Sir, should we continue the service?" Daniel looked at his untouched sermon notes. We already have. News of the confession spread across Abuja before midday. Short videos appeared online despite Daniel's instruction. Some captions declared that a powerful native doctor had been destroyed by an Abuja pastor. Others claimed Daniel had defeated him in a secret spiritual battle. Grace Covenant Assembly received interview requests from radio stations, bloggers, and 2 national television programs. Daniel rejected every request that framed the event as a contest between 2 miracle workers. The following Sunday, the warehouse was packed. People stood outside beneath hired canopies. Some came to worship. Many came because they hoped to witness another spectacle. Daniel entered the pulpit and looked at the crowd he had once begged God to provide. The sight did not bring the satisfaction he expected. If you came to see the altar where a native doctor was defeated, he began, you may be disappointed. This altar defeated nobody. It is wood and glass on a concrete floor. The visitors became quiet. A man told the truth here. A church was prevented from taking revenge. And all of us were reminded that power without mercy becomes another form of bondage. That is what happened. He preached about repentance, restitution, and the difference between forgiveness and escape from consequences. Chief Obinna remained in custody while the investigation continued. The mechanic who tampered with Daniel's car was arrested. Nnamdi cooperated with prosecutors. The case moved slowly, as cases often did, but Daniel refused requests from influential people to settle the matter as men of God. Mercy does not require us to hide attempted murder, he told them. Months later, Daniel visited Obinna at the correctional center with Miriam, Inspector Bala's permission, and an elder from the church. Obinna wore a plain uniform. Without beads and markings, he appeared smaller and older. My granddaughter is well, he told them. Ijeoma brings her sometimes. I am glad, Miriam said. Obinna could not hold her gaze. Madam, I endangered your husband. I brought fear into your home. I cannot ask you to forget it. No, Miriam replied. You cannot. He nodded, accepting the firmness of her answer. But I am asking God to remove hatred from me, she continued. That is the forgiveness I can honestly offer today. The rest may take time. Tears filled Obinna's eyes. Thank you. He had begun writing the names of people he deceived or threatened. The list covered several pages. Some accusations could never be proved. Some money could never be returned. Some people wanted no contact with him. Repentance, he was discovering, did not erase the road behind him. It only changed the direction in which he walked. The court eventually sentenced him for conspiracy, criminal intimidation, and his role in the vehicle tampering. His cooperation and guilty plea reduced the sentence, but did not remove it. On the day judgment was delivered, journalists waited outside the courthouse. One shouted at Daniel, "Pastor, has your God finally won?" Daniel stopped. For a moment he considered walking away. Then he faced the cameras. God's victory is not that Chief Obinna entered prison, he said. God's victory began when fear stopped ruling our church and truth stopped hiding inside that man. Justice must continue. So must mercy. Years later, members of Grace Covenant Assembly still spoke about the Sunday the native doctor knelt in the aisle. With every retelling, the crowd became larger, the atmosphere darker, and the confession more dramatic. Some said thunder sounded when his staff struck the floor. Others claimed the church lights went out and returned when Daniel began to pray. Daniel corrected them whenever he heard such additions. There was no thunder, he would say. The lights did not go out. Do not add magic because truth appears too ordinary for you. The truth was quieter and more difficult. A pastor survived an attack but nearly allowed fear and pride to consume his calling. A wife loved him enough to confront him. A frightened congregation learned that faith could include police reports, hospital treatment, security lights, and prayer. A powerful man discovered that intimidation was not strength. And when he finally knelt, the pastor standing before him refused to become the new object of fear. That was the victory. Not that one man's power proved greater than another man's, but that, before an altar in Abuja, vengeance was offered a microphone, and mercy refused to let it speak.